When I was at IFAST, um, I remember roughly talking to you and Bill about like the process for evaluating a pitcher's progression from start to start. And a lot of it was predicated on like getting back IR, getting back range of motion. Can you talk a little bit about like that thinking process or what metrics
Yeah,
you'd be looking at to see readiness or recovery?
right. And it's, I think we're taught this way because we all kind of have like a similar methodology or thought on this. It can be whatever. Like this is my thing. Like KPIs. This is what I like learning what other people do or like other people's systems because there's a lot of overlap. Like meaning like, um, like you do a store test and you say, oh, like we don't have the sacrum's not come back or the ilium's not moving on the sacrum, whatever. Like, okay, that's not something. Well, I guess like Bill's like low propulsion test is similar to that, but like if you have like a PRI model, like you're not using the store test, right? You're using something else, but like it all is kind of, giving you the same definition of what's happening. So anyways, I just kind of preface it with saying like there's a lot of ways to do it, but um, I think what you have to do if you have time with somebody, meaning let's say you have 2 off seasons or more with somebody, you can usually start to dial in what like their key performance like measurement would be, evaluate him. And then so if he was a pitcher, I used to use like a 3 level like tier system. So like, you're tired, so you're not going to give him like this demanding reset or whatever you want to call it. So you would use the easiest one that you could use, and then on day. So then we would do that the night. Let's say you pitched at a 7 p.m. and you were done at 9. You would go in, do your recovery stuff for your shoulder, your acute, like kind of local, acute stuff for the shoulder, and then you would do your kind of low level reset. Then the next day, if you had restored, if your IR had improved from that night before, you might do a level 2 reset. And it's the same concept. It's still the same. Like, let's say it's like an adductor pullback, a standing supported left stance, and then like a knee to knee. Like those are level 1, level 2, level 3, and then by day 3 those 5 days between the start, you want to be doing your level 3 and get 2 days of level 3 before you go into your next start. And that should restore your movement if you've historically had success with that. So that's kind of like the approach, that we use with a guy with success. And I've used it with other guys too, not just one guy, but, I've used it with multiple guys. But conceptually, that's kind of how you lay it out. And it just fits with anything, right? Like if you a lot of pitchers lift post game after they pitch, like you're not going to go in and go, 5 sets of 3 trap bar deadlift, at 90% of your max, right? You could if you wanted to, depending on the model, but like if you want to like couple high days together or whatever, you could absolutely do that. But just from like the relationship of fatigue and then training intensity, I think it just makes sense. Some guys, like if they have trouble pushing off the mound and you see their toe drag kind of be circular versus like a straight line down or a straight-ish line down, so you can kind of say like, okay, this guy probably doesn't AB duct that back leg very well. Maybe he doesn't great, coupled with hip, maybe if he lacks hip extension, maybe he's AB ducting out of that, plane, that frontal plane or whatever. And so, maybe it's hip extension issue or whatever. But anyways, so if you see the breakdown in that, then, that's probably a kind of a KPI for his movement. And so now right abduction or back leg abduction becomes something that we work on through the week, and we try to restore that to his norms.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
absolutely. I think like I just having that like long-term lens of the individual to see what KPIs are most, important to them, kind of paired with that wider lens of what actually makes sense from a mechanical standpoint across large averages.
Mm-hmm.
And making that kind of fit into your N equals 1 environment. Something I think about as far as sprinting goes and sprinters, especially managing hamstring injuries, is like the metrics I'll typically utilize is like a max hip flexion active knee extension test to look at excursion of that posterior chain. And because we'll see a major decrease after hamstring strain, and we'll see decrease across like with fatigue. So what you'll see is after hamstring strain or with just hamstring fatigue, you'll end up seeing a decreased knee extension angle or an increased knee flexion angle for max torque production. So if I'm looking at somebody between meet to meet, if they're losing max hip flexion active knee extension or losing torque across longer angles, that might be an indicator of lack of recovery. Or like you're talking about pitching, looking at like the circular toe drag, et cetera, we could look at just angulation of hip flexion paired with knee extension to see if they're actually shortening up or tightening to protectively keep themselves from hitting certain angles. That's kind of how I would translate that to the track world.
Yeah, it comes down to just conceptually being able to, like, fatigue interrupts, your ability to go through normal ranges of motion, right? In addition to, I mean, fatigue can inhibit output, but sometimes it's, I think, it's, whether it's coinciding or it's one or the other, right? But like, the inability to move through the range of motion that you would normally move through to actually produce the impulse that you normally would, like that can limit, the output as well. So whether it's, the actual, inhibition of output, or whether it's just, fatigue is taken away from your range of motion.
Exactly. And how much is that perturbing your biomotor expression, percentage points away from your optimum? And then over time, if that's just 1%, 2% a week over the course of a season, you're not actually getting that back, then that compounds to the point where, maybe you can catch a problem before it becomes a problem.
Yeah.